In international politics, symbolism often matters as much as substance. That is why the world reacted with shock when Donald Trump, known for his loud rhetoric against socialism and authoritarian regimes, chose to engage with Delcy Rodríguez, the vice president of Nicolas Maduro's government, instead of María Corina Machado, Venezuela's globally celebrated opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner. To many observers, this move appeared contradictory, even hypocritical. For years, Washington had framed Venezuela as a textbook example of dictatorship, economic collapse, and human rights abuses. María Corina Machado had become the face of democratic resistance, recognized internationally for her struggle against authoritarian rule. Her Nobel Peace Prize symbolized hope, sacrifice, and moral legitimacy. So why did Trump bypass her? Why did he lean toward a senior figure from the very regime the United States had sanctioned, isolated, and condemned? The answer lies not in morality, not in democratic ideals, and not in international awards, but in power, control, stability, and strategic interests. This decision is not just about Venezuela. It is a case study in how realpolitik overrides idealism, how energy security outweighs democratic symbolism, and how American foreign policy often prioritizes order over justice. To understand this move, we must peel back the layers: history, intelligence assessments, economic interests, domestic U.S. politics, and Trump's personal governing philosophy. Venezuela's collapse and the struggle for power from oil giant to failed state. Venezuela was once one of the richest countries in Latin America. Sitting on the world's largest proven oil reserves, it enjoyed decades of prosperity. But under Hugo Chavez and later Nicolas Maduro, the country descended into economic mismanagement, corruption, hyperinflation, and authoritarian control. Sanctions, while aimed at pressuring the regime, further crippled the economy. Millions fled the country. Food shortages, power outages, and institutional collapse became everyday realities. By the mid-2020s, Venezuela was not just an authoritarian state, it was a fragile state, and fragile states terrify policymakers. Because fragile states don't just suffer internally, they destabilize entire regions. The opposition's rise and limits. María Corina Machado emerged as a fearless opposition figure. She challenged Maduro openly, survived threats and political bans, and built international support. Her Nobel Peace Prize crowned her as a moral leader and a symbol of resistance. But here is the uncomfortable truth: moral legitimacy does not automatically translate into governing capacity. Inside Venezuela, opposition structures were fragmented, key leaders were exiled, imprisoned, or silenced. Security forces remained loyal to the regime. State institutions were hollowed out, but still controlled by regime loyalists. From Washington's intelligence perspective, the opposition lacked one critical thing: control. The CIA and the fear of chaos. Intelligence versus idealism. According to reports, U.S. intelligence agencies, particularly the CIA, warned Trump against a sudden transfer of power to the opposition. Why? Because history is brutal in its lessons. Iraq after Saddam, Libya after Gaddafi, Afghanistan after regime collapse. In all three cases, removing a regime without a stable successor led to chaos, insurgency, and long-term instability. The intelligence community reportedly concluded that regime insiders, not opposition figures, were better positioned to prevent Venezuela from collapsing into violent anarchy. Delcy Rodríguez, despite her association with Maduro, had institutional knowledge, connections with military and bureaucratic elites, experience negotiating under sanctions, influence within the oil sector. From an intelligence standpoint, she represented continuity without total collapse. Why stability matters more than democracy. In practice, Washington often talks about democracy, but in moments of crisis, its top priority is usually preventing civil wars, securing strategic assets, avoiding military overreach. A sudden empowerment of the opposition could have triggered military rebellion, pro-Maduro militias, regional spillover, refugee surges. For Trump, whose foreign policy emphasized avoiding endless wars, this was unacceptable. Part 3. Trump's foreign policy philosophy: transactional, not ideological. Trump does not approach foreign policy as a moral crusade. He approaches it as a transaction. His worldview is simple: who controls the ground? Who controls the resources? Who can deliver results quickly? In Trump's logic, if you can't run the country tomorrow, I'm not betting on you. Machado represented hope. Rodríguez represented leverage. Trump's distrust of elite moral narratives. Trump has long been skeptical of international institutions, Nobel committees, human rights organizations, academic foreign policy elites to him, awards are often detached from reality. In his view, a Nobel Prize does not guarantee loyalty of the army, functioning bureaucracy, economic stabilization. This skepticism played directly into the decision to sideline Machado. The oil factor, the real currency of power. Venezuela's oil is the prize. Venezuela's oil reserves are not just large, they are geopolitically critical. At a time of global energy competition, tensions with Russia, uncertainty in the Middle East, Washington sees Venezuela as a strategic energy wildcard. But oil doesn't flow because of speeches. Oil flows because of infrastructure, technocrats, and deals. Delcy Rodríguez had years of experience navigating PDVSA sanctions loopholes. International energy negotiations. The opposition, while ideologically appealing, lacked this operational depth. Energy security over democratic purity. Trump's calculation was clear. A controlled transition with regime insiders could restart oil production faster. A revolutionary shift risked sabotage and collapse. For a president focused on economic leverage, this choice was logical, even if morally uncomfortable. The opposition's structural weaknesses. International support does not equal domestic power. Machado enjoyed immense global admiration. But inside Venezuela, media access was limited, political machinery was dismantled, grassroots networks were fragile. Authoritarian regimes are designed to destroy alternatives. By the time Washington seriously considered post-Maduro scenarios, the opposition had been institutionally hollowed out. This made U.S. planners nervous. The military question. No transition succeeds without the military. Venezuela's armed forces benefited from regime patronage, feared retribution under opposition rule. Distrusted opposition leaders. Rodríguez, as a regime insider, offered assurances. Machado, as a reformer, represented uncertainty, personality, perception, and power. Trump's ego and political psychology. Trump's decisions are often shaped by perception and personal dynamics. Reports suggest Machado's Nobel recognition did not translate into personal rapport with Trump. In contrast, Rodríguez's role as a negotiator aligned with Trump's preference for dealmakers over activists. This is not unusual in Trump's record. He favored strongmen he could negotiate with. He distrusted moral crusaders who challenged his authority. A broader pattern in U.S. history. This decision fits a long historical pattern, supporting authoritarian allies for stability, prioritizing strategic interests over democratic movements, backing known quantities over uncertain reformers. From Cold War Latin America to the Middle East, the U.S. has repeatedly chosen order over ideals. Trump did not invent this approach, he simply applied it more openly. The cost of this decision damaged to U.S. moral credibility by sidelining a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Washington undermined its democracy narrative, disillusioned activists worldwide, reinforced cynicism about Western values. Authoritarian regimes will use this as proof that the West only cares about interests, not principles. Long-term risks, short-term stability can come at a long-term cost. Entrenching old power structures, weakening democratic movements, delaying genuine reform. History shows that suppressed aspirations eventually resurface, often violently. What this means for the future. For Venezuela, a controlled transition may prevent collapse, but real democracy remains uncertain. Power may simply change hands within the same elite. For the United States, strategic gains may be temporary. Moral authority continues to erode. Future opposition movements may distrust. Washington conclusion. Control over idealism. Trump's decision to favor Maduro as vice president over a Nobel Peace Prize winner was not a mistake. It was a deliberate choice rooted in realpolitik. This moment exposes the uncomfortable truth of global politics. Power matters more than purity. Stability often outweighs justice. Democracy is supported only when it is convenient. In the end, this story is not about Venezuela alone. It is about how the world truly works behind speeches, beyond awards, and beneath the language of values. And it reminds us that in global power politics, control almost always wins over idealism.